Welcome to Studying Law Around the World. I'm Claudio Klaus. In each episode, I talk with lawyers, law students, and professors from different parts of the world to talk about legal education, careers, and what the profession looks like in real life. We talk about the hard parts, the surprises, and the decisions that shaped their paths. Whether you're planning to study abroad, thinking about working in another legal system, or just curious about how law works around the world, this podcast is for you.
If you're an internationally trained lawyer or law student working in or trying to break into an English-speaking common law system, you know that legal writing is one of the biggest challenges and one of the most important skills to master. That's where Grammatica comes in. I'm Rebecca Lockwood, the lawyer, mediator, educator, and founder of Grammatica International. We help lawyers and law students to write sharper, speak clearer, and land more interviews with on-demand online courses, live workshops, and one-on-one consulting designed just for legal professionals. I have worked with so many lawyers like you who are exceptionally smart, qualified, and capable, but need some guidance to really stand out in a competitive legal market. And I get it myself, having lived and worked in 5 countries during my 17 years in law and education. Whether you're looking to sharpen your writing skills generally, refresh your CV, or draft an application for a law program, Grammatica can help. Visit grammatica.co to get started.
Today I have the opportunity to interview Dr. Daria Levina. She is a fantastic professional that has a breadth of experience that is just so incredible to hear about. She's got the opportunity to study and work in a journey that spans Russia, Germany, US, Italy. So very, very international. And she is a Harvard alum as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, Daria. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to share what I know with the prospective LL.M applicants.
I really appreciate it. And to start on today's conversation, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about what originally motivated you to pursue an LLM and how that has just really shaped everything you do these days.
Of course. So I'm originally from Russia and I did my first law degree there. I worked there for a few years as well for a German law firm. I used to be an arbitration lawyer, and after a few years of working in a firm, which I really, really liked because it was a mid-sized firm and we had such an amazing team, but I just felt that I sort of reached the ceiling in terms of the projects that I've been working on. And I didn't know what to do next professionally. And I've seen people around me, like more senior professionals, go do LLM abroad. And I just thought that I wanted to try that as well. I felt like I've done a few shorter study abroad programs, like summer schools. For instance, I went to the Hague Academy, to the Paris Arbitration Academy, like all that fancy arbitration stuff. I was able to secure scholarships for that. And it was a lot of fun. But at some point, I just felt that I wanted to pursue a longer program abroad and just have a taste of it. And also try to understand what to do next professionally. And I first applied to Europe. I applied to the MITS, the Masters of International Dispute Settlement in Geneva, and 2 schools in the UK. And I had my eyes set on Oxford because not just because of the title, but because they had very unusually 2 fully funded scholarships for people with my demographic parameters, and I thought that was fantastic. But I didn't get into Oxford. I did get into Cambridge, and I got into MITS Geneva with a full scholarship. But by that time, I decided that I didn't want to do arbitration anymore, and so I declined those offers and reapplied to the US. And that time I got into NYU and Harvard, and I managed to secure funding, which was very hard. But sort of that was the story behind my decision to pursue LL.M.
This episode of Studying Law Around the World is proudly sponsored by ITL Prep from Emond Exam Prep, the comprehensive resource designed specifically for internationally trained lawyers preparing for the NCA exams. We understand that the NCA accreditation journey can feel overwhelming,
You can face many obstacles getting to success. Courses that cost too much, offer too little, or leave you more confused than when you started. That's why Imund Exam Prep created ITL Prep, a smarter, more reliable way to succeed. Our module-based self-study courses and expert-led review sessions are designed by actual law professors. Many of whom are ITLs themselves or teach at international law schools. They know the NCA process, they understand your journey, and they've built these courses to guide you clearly through the NCA syllabi, helping you gain the understanding you need to be at your best for success on your exams. With ITL Prep, you'll gain confidence and clarity, whether it's foundational concepts or you're tackling specialized Canadian law topics. It's affordable, it's flexible, it's built with you in mind. And right now, we're offering something special. As an exclusive offer for the Studying Law Around the World podcast listeners, ITL Prep is offering 50% off all courses for the first 50 purchases. Simply use the promo code ITL50 at checkout. Casebooks and other resources must be purchased separately. Visit emond.ca today, that's emond.ca, and use promo code ITL50 to claim your 50% discount on NCA exam preparation courses.
That's amazing. So you've received some of the most competitive scholarships and grants in the world, really. What are some kinds of things that you can share with our listeners here that strong applicants tend to get right, and also where they get many things wrong? I know you've worked with people helping them with those applications as well. So what are some thoughts you have on that?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of thoughts because I really like helping people with applications, and I write about it a lot. And I would say one of the mistakes is not understanding that when you write applications, especially when you write essays, regardless of whether you use AI tools or not, there are different stages. Like nobody sits down in front of the laptop and produces an amazing essay from scratch like in an hour. That just doesn't happen. And so like when I work with LLM applicants, helping them develop their LLM applications, there's a lot that I help them do in terms of, for instance, analyzing their profile, talking to them about the experiences they had that were meaningful to them and that shaped them as lawyers and as professionals, and working that into the application instead of just trying to squeeze a perfect essay from the start. I would say that's the biggest one.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. So as you just said, you've helped other people to apply to top LLM programs, but also to PhD programs. And maybe what's one piece of advice you find yourself giving over and over again to students?
Yeah, so I would actually develop this idea that I just talked about how we are presented with this view of writing that it's a linear process. And I think a lot of it comes from the movies, because like when you see a movie and there's someone who is a writer who writes, like you see someone whose process is just that. They sit down and then initially they are tortured and it doesn't come together, but then they just write and it all comes together perfectly, and I don't know, they get recognition or something like that. And the reason this is how writing is presented in movies, because like when you make a movie you need to visualize something, and there's a lot of in writing that you actually can't visualize. For instance, a lot of writing for me happens when I first like I had a session where I just was brainstorming, I was idea generating, but then I would go on a walk. And a lot of my writing happens on walks. And so, like, something that I really recommend often, like, as you mentioned, this is the piece of advice I give over and over, is that when you're working on your applications, your work essentially will be consistent of two types of work. One is focused work or focused writing. You will be sitting in front of the laptop or you will be taking notes like on paper, whatever works for you. And that's one part. But then there will be a lot of what is called diffuse thinking. And a lot of thinking will happen unexpectedly, like when you're queuing at a grocery store, or when you're taking a walk, or when you're talking to a friend. And I think it's really, really important to account for both, because both are really, really important. And that's just the I think the most important piece of advice that I I give to LLM and also PhD applicants.
Fantastic, amazing. Another one of the topics that I'm sure you end up discussing a lot with people is funding and negotiating offers. So I'm sure that's something that people feel nervous about really. And when you raised $92,000 to attend Harvard, what helped you to approach that process with confidence?
Yeah, I think, well, the primary element was that I was very lucky that I didn't know how American system of education worked. And it may sound naive, and it was, but especially because I did all those shorter study road trips in Europe, and I always got a scholarship for that. I sort of, whenever someone told me, well, in the US, you need a lot of money to study at a top university, I sort of discarded this because I mean, like, I thought like if you work hard, you always get a scholarship. At least that's how it works for me. And I just didn't understand that the whole structure of how education works in the US is very, very different. And what was really helpful was that I just like on the most fundamental ideological premise, I refuse the idea that accessibility of education should depend on socioeconomic circumstances. It is unfortunately that we are conditioned to believe, like, or to accept, because most economies in the world are capitalist. But I don't think it's okay. And I think it was really, really helpful for me to keep applying for scholarships and keep raising money because I just couldn't understand how the fact that I don't have rich parents could be a limit to education. It just didn't work in my head. And I think it was the single most helpful frame of mind that I had. And I really, I really wanted to come across and to just pass it on to other people. Because I think one day we will probably live in a world where education is accessible. And if you have rich parents, yes, your rich parents will pay for it, but if you don't, you probably will get a scholarship because I think that's how it should work. And then something else that also really helped me was that I never stopped after getting a rejection. I used all of the rejections and failures as just as a redirection. And what I notice a lot of times is that people who are not successful, they do have strong potential, but they stop trying or they try less than people who turn out to be successful. That's obviously not a full picture. And obviously there are so many factors involved. But if there's one thing that I would like to pass on is that very often the difference between the success and the failure is just the number of attempts, like smart attempts, because you do need to evaluate what didn't work, what you could improve, but in a nutshell, that's it.
You know, as we've been hearing from lawyers around the world on this show, one thing that's universal is the challenge of managing massive amounts of case materials. Whether you're dealing with witness statements in Sydney or reviewing contracts in Chicago, the volume can be overwhelming. That's why I wanted to tell you about Rev. Instead of analyzing documents one at a time, you upload everything to one workspace: PDFs, audio recordings, video depositions, transcripts. Rev's AI analyzes them all together and spots connections you'd never catch working file by file. Every insight comes with clickable citations that take you right back to the source. So when the AI finds a contradiction between witness statements, you can verify it instantly. Whether you're a law student or practicing attorney building your international career, Rev Insights gives you that edge our guests always talk about. Check it out at rev.com.
Amazing. Well, that was interesting. Thank you for sharing your opinion point of view on that. And you've moved from the law practice into academia and consulting after your experience at Harvard. So I'd love to hear a little more about that transition. What helped you to make that transition? How did you know it was the next step for you? And how have you enjoyed it?
Sure. So I think I am very well suited to pursuing projects that require a lot of autonomy. I'm very good with self-direction and I really like when I have a large project that I can structure in a way that I want and then nobody bothers me. And academia and my own consultancy, they are very good, very natural avenues for realizing that. because I've seen that a lot of people who start PhDs, they then really, really struggle because they don't like that they need to self-direct. They like having someone to tell them what to do. And that's just a different what it's called, just a different way to operate in the world, and everybody's different, so it's really, really important to account for that. But for me, this transition was primarily due to the fact that I really like having my own projects, and I learned a lot when I was working as a practicing attorney, and that was incredibly valuable. But it was just, I felt that it limited me too much in what I wanted to pursue, and I couldn't also choose projects. For instance, there are topics that are really interesting for me that I want to pursue. Like when I did my PhD at the European University Institute in Italy, I was really interested in the questions of court design and how one designs better courts. But if I were a practicing attorney, I wouldn't just be able to choose what to work on. I would have clients, and clients would tell me what their problems are, and I would need to solve them. So that's a very different way to exist. Yeah, there's just no right or wrong. It's just what works for you. And for me, academia and owning my own consultancy are at the moment the best way to realize what I like.
Amazing. Looking at the global legal education space today, what trends do you think will be important for the next generation of lawyers? And this could be, advice for people who are thinking or considering going in an LM soon, or even these other thoughts that you might have in that sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal policy is to be aware of the trends, but not necessarily let them guide professional life choices. In a sense that I don't think it's wise to fully depend on a trend and to let it decide for you, but rather start with understanding what it is that you want your life to look like, and see how, given what's happening in the world, you can realize that. But speaking of broader trends, I think like one of the things that I've been seeing recently is that usually previously people would only consider LLM programs in the conventional West, in continental Europe or the UK or the US, and now the programs in Southeast Asia, for instance, they are becoming more popular, and I think that's a really good trend because it's just people are moving from the perceived superiority of the West and just embracing the diversity of the world and learning to appreciate all the variety that exists in the world, including the legal world. And I think that's a very welcome development. I mean, another trend is obviously AI. I mean, everybody is talking about it. So I'm very reluctant to talk too much about it because I think like our listeners are getting news about AI left and right. But like something that's applicable to applications and the legal skill set as well is that at the moment, what I see a lot of people, they treat AI as a replacement for their work, and that's not effective. Like I had multiple people come to me like over the past year, for instance, and they asked me to review their LLM personal statements, and it was quite evident that parts were AI generated. And it was evident because AI is not good at idea generation, and you can very easily spot those fully AI generated essays. And I've seen the same a few months ago when I was a member of the selection committee for a regional arbitration academy, and there were just people who copy pasted things from. Apparently, they uploaded their CV and then they copy pasted what the AI generated without even reducing the formatting of AI. Like the bold parts, and obviously that was like an immediate rejection. And what I think is important to understand, and I think it's going to be a trend, is that AI is not going to replace people. It's going to enhance people. And that applies to applications as well. Because if you are a good writer, AI can do a lot of for you, like especially the editing part, and especially, for instance, checking the English grammar. Because most LLM applicants are not English native speakers, and English is a huge barrier. But it can help with English grammar. But treating it as a substitution is just not going to help because it's the same as hiring an intern, and instead of teaching that intern, just giving them just giving the intern the entire projects. So yeah, like I think that the trend is just to learn how to enhance your skill set and your legal acumen with AI, like not just outsource to it like entire projects, because at least as AI currently stands, it's just not producing optimal results. I'd say these are the trends.
No, that's amazing. I really appreciate you bringing that up. I think those are very important conversations that we need to continue having. We can't really outsource our thinking completely. So it definitely needs a lot of editing and definitely needs a lot of teaching and instructing. And we definitely need to learn how to be better prompters. But not only that, we need to just, continue exercising our critical thinking and making sure that we, especially in this kind of essay where you want to show who you are, right? And I really appreciate you bringing that up. And to wrap today's episode, I wanted to hear from you. For someone listening who dreams of studying abroad but is unsure if they have what it takes, what would you encourage them to remember before giving up on that goal?
Absolutely. I would say don't quite believe in having what it takes. What I believe in is building a strong profile, building a strong application, and then really separating things that you can control and things that you can't. And in my personal experience, like unless you are someone who hasn't been doing nothing your whole life, and then suddenly you decide that you want to go to Harvard, unless you are that, there is really a lot you can do. And the problem that I see most often is not that people who want to apply to a really good university, it's not that they're not qualified, or it's not that they don't have what it takes, but it's that they're so close to their professional background or their personal background that they don't see how much value they have and how much they can offer this world. So what I would like our listeners to remember is that, like, whenever you have those thoughts that I'm just not good enough, or like it's not going to work out for me, maybe treat those thoughts as like not as the truth, like not as a fact, because those thoughts, they often cover up as truth, but treat them as as what they are, the thoughts. And if you want to give it a shot, try anyway, and just approach it in a more like scientific way, like build a hypothesis, like what if I'm qualified, what if I can do ABC, and then see whether it works out. And then just proceed with what I call compassionate detachment. First of all, compassion to yourself, because life is hard, and applications are hard, and there are things that you can control and there are things that you can't, and unfortunately that's just how it works. But don't rob yourself of an opportunity, unless you've tried and you actually have given it like enough in terms of like strategy and research, and just doing whatever you can in the circumstances that you're in. I'd say that's what I would like our listeners to remember.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much once again for being in the podcast today. Thank you all for tuning into this episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I really hope it's been helpful.
Whether you're studying law in Mumbai or practicing in Manhattan, Rev can help you transcribe and analyze all your case materials with verifiable citations. Learn more at rev.com.